had no idea that it was Cinco de Mayo. This is going to be the easiest talk ever. How many of you had one drink? How many of you had two? More than two. Okay. All right. So my name is Michael Lopp. I'm going to see if everything's working here. Can you hear me everywhere? A little echoing here in the back. You okay? Are we good? All right. Okay. How do I want to start this? Let's do a little getting to know you here first. So how many engineers in the room? Code as craft. All right, all right. So how many designers-ish type people? I know that's a big, huge, fat word right there. Okay. How many have I not called on yet? What are you? Product management. Any other product managers here? All right. Any HR here? Ooh, okay. The one with the hat. I'm not worried about you. Excellent. All right. Okay, so primarily engineering. All right, I have to tune this a little bit. All right, so one of my favorite things to do in a talk is to kind of figure out kind of what the segue is. Unfortunately, Cinco de Mayo provided that to me, so now I have an easy segue into this. You're wondering, I thought the talk was called, what's the talk called again? Oh yeah, the engineer, the designer, and the dictator. But it came from this other talk that I did, which was the engineering mindset, which was this fascinating talk I wanted to do about a lot of these companies that are showing up right now, where the engineers are still running the show, right? The traditional model forever ago was engineers showed up, we worked our asses off, da-da-da, the MBAs showed up, and they screwed it all up, and suddenly we got fired, right? And that's not happening as much, right? There's Google, there's Quora, there's Facebook, the company I'm currently at. We'll talk about Apple a lot here. They say they're engineering run, but it's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that in a second. But I thought that was a really interesting idea. But as I started to think about that, I started to think about the engineering mindset. I realized those initial conditions weren't just that you had a really good engineer when you started to do a thing. It's actually a set of people that you actually need to get started. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the engineer, the designer, and the dictator. A little bit about me. I'm Rands. I have this nickname that's like taken over my life. People like say, "Hey, Rands," and I answer to it now. It's very strange. This is my. I'm the guy on Twitter that sounds like a fortune cookie. So, and I really like your Twitter logo. It's very attractive to me. So, anyway, so I do a lot of tweeting. I've also, as Chad mentioned, I've written a couple of books, Managing Humans, which is for engineers who want to get into leadership, into management. We are traditionally really bad at the things that managers need to be really good at. So this is a thing that I've been worrying about for years and years. So I wrote a book, because I have a blog called Rands in Repose. I wrote another book that came out with O'Reilly last year called Being Geek, which is a different sort of model. It was sort of for everybody who has a career and they wanted to manage their career. They want to find a job. How do I find a job? What do I do in a phone screen? What do I do in an interview? The whole cycle back to, I got to find a job, and just kind of walk through all of that. So I wrote some books. A particular interest, and a lot of fun now. I worked at Apple for 8 years. I was, I ran part of the macOS 10 team for about 5 years, and then I ran the store, the online store, for about 3 years. It's really cool, because when you talk about Apple, when you work at Apple, you get fired. Now I can talk about Apple and not get fired. So we're going to talk about that. Sorry, Steve, we're streaming this, right? Hey, dude. All right. Anyway, so a lot of the Apple is my opinion. I'm not going to give away any secrets or anything like that, because maybe I'll work at Apple again. Who knows? Before we begin, I got to give you guys some context to talk about this team building idea that I want to go through. And to start with, I'm going to start with a little bit of a background of a conference called Webstock. How many of you have heard of Webstock? All right, pretty good. Webstock is this amazing conference down in Wellington, New Zealand, for those of you who don't know. Wellington, New Zealand is 8,961 miles from here. It's very far away. Why would you ever go to this conference? The reason this conference is amazing is they do an amazing job of taking care of the speakers and taking care of the people who show up. They have a singular focus. They have a singular message. that drags speakers and attendees down to Wellington, New Zealand. And the message is really simple. It's this. This feels kind of trite, right? You're awesome, right? Let me tell you, as a speaker who has spoken there several times, they just inundate you with this. This is like the people who run this conference sit there and they're constantly on message. You're awesome. Thank you for coming to this conference. You're flying all the way to New Zealand. That is so awesome, right? This goes on for 7 months. At the bottom of the mailing list, it says, you're receiving this email because you're on this mailing list and because you're awesome, right? Singular focus, clear message. And the thing is, well, we'll talk about this more. I got to tell you another thing here. I took this picture down in Wellington when I was doing this talk down there, part of this talk down there. And the thing about this is, you can't really see it on here because it's kind of a blown out photograph, is if whoever saw me getting set up here, I was like cleaning screens with a little thing and stuff. It's Steve Jobs who's kind of gotten in my head, because the thing is, before any of his talks, when he's done doing all his demo, these guys and gals walk out with these white gloves and they go over and they clean everything. So anyway, that's why I was doing that. Anyway, so you are awesome. Another thing that I really care about, and something that the Webstock crowd really talks to, is I'm really concerned with building software for human beings. I'm not the guy who's going to go build router software. I'm not going to go build something that's a great stuff, and if you like to build Apache systems, that's totally awesome, but this focus is around people who are building products for humans. Talk more about that. The other thing I want to put down in your head, getting over a cold, I apologize. I just hang that out there. Your job has an expiration date. And I know this from a lot of research. First off, I know that me as an engineer, every 3 years or so, I switch my gig. I don't know why. Maybe I'm bored, maybe I figured out the problems, something's going on there. But here's the thing. I've seen thousands of resumes, and it's something that I've now looked for the last 5 years. I go and I look, and I see every 3 years, the people that I want to hire, they've changed their gig. Guessing a lot of you are probably falling into that same demographic. So think about this. Maybe you're very happy with your job right now. Chad's going to get pissed at me because I'm telling him that all those people are going to leave. Think about this. You're very happy right now. Maybe you're not. Who knows? The thing is, you're going to be doing something totally different in 3 years. Maybe not. Rands, you said you were at Apple for 8 years. That's more than 3. I switched my job 3 times there. 3 years in, Mac OS 10, I'm bored. I want to do something else. I'm running a lot of different teams, a lot of interesting things. Give me something else. Okay, Rands, go build a wiki server and a calendar server. I'm like, that's interesting. Let's go do that. Didn't go as well as planned. A year and a half later, I'm like, I'm bored. It's not going well. This is not interesting to me. I know all these people. What I do? Went over and ran this store. Every 3 years. Not total line in the ground, but the thing is, think about that. 3 years from now, you're going to be doing something new. And you're going to need some people to do it with you. I've already said this. So, there's a table with you in this next career that you're going to have, this next thing that you're going to build. This is a metaphor. There's 3 people that need to be at this table with you. This is my premise. This is what you need to be successful in this next thing that you're going to do. I'm going to talk about each of these roles. You need an engineer, you need a designer, and you need a dictator. 3 folks. Let's talk about each one real quick. I'm supposed to talk through the subway noise. Is that right? Okay. You need an engineer. Obviously, you need an engineer. I'm an engineer. You need me. I'm the guy who actually builds stuff, right? Here's what happens when you don't have an engineer. And this happens a lot. Any guesses what this is? This is what I like to call chaos. This is unstructured noise. This is you wonderful design people taking something and saying, well, I can learn HTML, right? Yeah, that's great. Can you make it scale, right? This is chaos. And this is what engineers hate. And I want to talk a little bit about the engineering mindset here. Tron Legacy, who saw it? Throw hands. All right. Not as many folks, huh? This is Tron Legacy is the world's longest screensaver with an excellent soundtrack. a really, really good screensaver. It's an even better soundtrack. For those of you, it's an okay. It's actually been growing on me. I first saw it, I'm like, this is a disaster. I've seen it, 17 more times. I'm like, okay, I can appreciate this now. So what's going on here, for those of you who don't know, is there's a very interesting theme inside of Tron Legacy. So Kevin Flynn, this is a sequel to the other stuff, is this guy gets in this little matrix world, gets plugged in, not plugged in, he actually goes into it, and then he realizes, hey, I've got a lot of work to do inside of this, and I'm totally blowing through plot points, and he realizes he can clone himself and leave part of himself in this place, which would be awesome, right? You can like duplicate yourself and put it in there. That's kind of awesome. And but the thing he wants to do, the thing that he's really interested in doing in this digital universe, is a thing that engineers erroneously believe. They believe that there's a way to build a perfect system. This is what is motivating a lot of engineers. I'm going to talk about this. Now, this is a horrible slide. Here's why. There's a lot of stuff on here, and I was sitting on the plane kind of like getting down to the 3 bullet points, but this is all relevant to the engineering mindset here. So I'm going to read it. Sorry. So engineers strive to reduce chaos because chaos is inefficient, right? We want to know how it's all fitting together. We're willing to take the time to go deep to understand something. Like, I really need to know that. Engineers believe there is discoverable right and wrong answers. They find facts because they're data-driven. They're willing to go to seemingly, spelling error, insane lengths for marginal efficiency gains. Anybody resonating here? Yeah, totally. I've worked, anyway, I won't go there. Anyway, they see the world as this discoverable system. There are a set of rules that are eventually going to be found that are going to explain everything. They will predict what's going to come next. They prepare for the unexpected. Another typo. This is what I get for editing slides right before. By being paranoid. They're trying to look ahead, because looking ahead will teach you more about the rules. They solve problems completely. Not all engineers, but that's what they do. I can't sleep until that piece of work, whatever that work unit is, however I might define it, is done. They love signal, they hate noise, they think perfection is beautiful, and they find all of this not to be that much work. They like to do this. But most importantly, I think what engineers like to do is they have an urge to build a thing. They want to go build something. That is what motivates them. And they've built a lot of things. This is Cora D'Angelo, former CTO of Facebook, Cora. Here's a nice system to understand all of the questions and the answers out there. Google recently re-engineered, or engineer back at the top. Well, I guess Schmidt was an engineer as well. Facebook, a lot of engineers are building a lot of really important things. And for all these cases, engineers are still running the show. They believe that there's a perfect system. The thing is, as I said in the beginning, human beings actually need to use your products. We're not writing router software. Maybe we are, maybe not here. And I think the thing is, you guys, we all are focused. We are surrounded by a huge amount of engineering-focused design. And you're so used to it that you don't even see it anymore. This is a file save menu, which you would never see on my desktop because, of course, I know the keyboard command to save a file really quickly. And I'm doing it all the time, right? Hi, Chad. Yeah, I'll be there at 6:30. I'm going to have a screwdriver beforehand. Is that cool? So file save. Yeah, I have some problems with my slides. File save. Is this other people here? Are you constantly saving your files? Are you constantly doing that? Whether it's TextMate, whether it's Photoshop, you're like, You're saving your files. Save. Save. It's a really interesting word. What are you actually doing there? Well, I think the person who originally came up with the idea, and I don't know who this is, was saying, hey, you need to save your file for later, right? I'm going to put it somewhere where you can go back and get it. But that's not what we're feeling with the file save. What you're saying is, I need to save this because shit happens, right? I am saving it from the engineer who was drunk at the Cinco de Mayo party, who just decided to kind of phone it in on that one bug back in 1996 in HTFS, and you only see this bug 1 out of 56,000 times, but it's still there. And we're not going to just pick on Mac OS X. We're picking on the people that think this is useful information to humans. What is this doing other than just causing stress? Now, I know the engineer. I don't actually know the engineer, but I know there's someone who said, hey, should happen. We got to put up the screen and give them some information and do whatever, right? It's like, but this is awful, right? This is just, think of how much stress has been created by this one screen, both of those screens. So, is there spelling mistakes in there? I just pulled this off Google.
We never noticed it before.
Whoa. Wow. He was really drunk. All right. Crowd's getting rowdy. Okay, so as an example of another example here, I want to show you on the iPad. Well, first I want to show you just an application. You've all seen an iPad before, I'm pretty sure. Loading. Anything embarrassing here? No, okay. All right, everyone see this? I'm going to close this application. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, I did. There it goes, right? It's gone. All right, I'm going to simulate an application crashing. You ready? You sitting down? Oops, same thing. It's gone. The exact same thing happened here as happened in those other screens, but it just went away. Now, how many engineers are sitting here going like, well, what happened? I don't actually, was it a file system problem? Is it something with OpenGL? What's going on here? Whatever, right? We should throw up a screen and give them some information that they're not going to understand, that at some point they might get to me at some later date. Now, the good news is with the iPad is, yes, that crash log plus your social security number and your hair color and all that stuff is being sent back to Cupertino. That's still happening there, but someone said, hey, listen, this crash window is just stressing us out. And my assumption is that's a designer that actually had that. Back to the table. We have our engineer. He's not too drunk. At the other seat is a designer. Now, I'm out of my area of expertise because I'm clearly an engineer, but after 8 years at Apple, that's something you learn by osmosis. So, this, I wonder why people are laughing. I know why you're laughing. This is what you get when an engineer designs an email interface. Now, hold on. This is an amazing application. I use this 10 times a day. This is wildly successful. And you cannot argue that. But does anyone think that this is a useful interface? Yes, it is. You can get in there and do stuff, but look at it. Just step back and look at it. It's really, really noisy, right? And I can't. You're looking at people's names? That's me. So go into the preferences or the system, whatever the hell is in it. It's sort of a nightmare, right? Again, wildly successful, but to me, this is not something that I'm like pleased to look at. The thing is, there's a fundamental tension between engineers and designers. We need to go party and get drunk a lot more. But let's talk about why that tension is there. So this is the growth of internet usage from 95 to 2010. I think it's millions. It must be, yeah. So I was at Netscape in 96. How many of you use Netscape? Awesome. Excellent. All right, you were probably using it over here. So anyway, so the thing is, let's see, we got 500 million by 2000, the next 500 million in 5 years. This is a lot of people. Software was making a pile of money before a browser showed up. It was making tons of money. But the thing about the browser is, the thing about the browser was, I think the reason that it became a worldwide phenomenon is suddenly all of these people could sit down and they could send you a picture of their cat. It's a very angry cat. I had a funny one the last time I did this. This is the kind of a buzzkill. Now, here's the deal. The thing is, the arrival of everyone and their cats presented a challenge to software engineers because we were used to sort of early adopters. And what are early adopters? Early adopters are fine with things exploding. They're fine with the little rough edges because it's cool to be an early adopter, to be part of the bleeding edge, right? So they're okay with things randomly blowing up and whatnot. And suddenly, your mom's there, and she wants to send you a picture of the most angry cat ever, and Netscape blows up. She's like, what? The thing is, there's this whole slew of people that showed up, and they just wanted it to work, right? They didn't want to care about SSL or RSA or JavaScript or anything. They just wanted it to work. Now, when an engineer says, well, we want it to work, that means it doesn't blow up, right? That's not what they're asking for. That's the smallest thing that they're asking for. They want it to work well for them. So probably what happened at Netscape is someone said, hey, what we need to do is we need to hire a designer because you're just designing interfaces for yourself. And you're like, what's a designer, right? I thought it meant they were good at Photoshop, right? That's the kind of the thing that a lot of engineers are thinking. Actually, the thing I want to suggest is if you're a designer type person, there's a good chance the vast majority of engineers don't know what you do. They think you do this. Designers in the audience again? Am I just, okay, yeah, okay. Am I speaking to you here? They thought this is what you were good at, right? And this is when they think designer, it means you're the person who can actually draw a pretty picture. And that is the smallest thing that you can actually do. For a word that can radically change the fortunes of a company, it's really interesting that there is no formal definition of what design actually is. I'm sure you could come up with one, but I've kept on looking. There's no thing that defines it really, really well. And there's a lot of acronyms and it's a lot of things that are very important that need to happen to get this done. But engineers don't know, some engineers don't know what half of this means. Here's my definition. I'm going to piss off the designers in the room now. I apologize. I think designers have three roles. They understand what the user wants. Not what the engineer wants, not what they want. They understand what the user wants. And I'll explain each of these. They're experts. They're experts at prioritizing, focusing, and describing that want. Whether it means being able to explain it to you, be able to draw it for you, be able to get to a whiteboard. They are also really good at using this knowledge to surprise and delight users, to exceed their expectations. Apple's really, really good at this. The Henry Ford quote that everyone always throws out, and I'm going to say again, it's like, if my users told me what they wanted, they would have said, I'm totally massacring this poor quote. If my customers told me what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. The idea is to get ahead of what they want, to predict that they want. And that's part of the designer's job. The title that I always think about when I'm thinking about designers isn't designers anymore. Relative to software, it's the user's experience. User experience is a title that I think describes the role better. So let's go through each of those bullets. What the user wants. What are they good at? There are a lot of people on the planet Earth. They're good at gathering that information, understanding what the user wants, all of them want, and writing it down, researching it, doing all that sort of stuff. They're really good at describing the want. How many of you use software from Panic? Wow. Wait, whoa, hold on. Mac and PC. I love you guys. That's awesome. Okay, great. So this is Coda. It's for anyone who would say HTML site editor sort of thing. You might look at it and see some discrepancies. I saw this at South by Southwest 2007, I'm guessing. And this is Cable Sasser. He's one of the founders of Panic Software. And he was like, I got to show you this, Rand. This is amazing. Check it out. And he fires up Photoshop, and he's showing this to me. And I'm like, holy crap. You're actually going to go do this editor. You're like a file transmit company. What the hell are you doing here? So he shows it to me, and I start clicking. And I'm like, he's like, oh, no, this is Photoshop. This is him sitting down in Photoshop and designing his pixel-based interface down to the pixel, the entire application. Not the entire app, this entire screen here. They're experts at describing what they want. This is something that Apple also does as well. High fidelity prototypes. None of this whiteboard shit. Show me exactly what it is that we're getting ourselves into. Surprise and delight. It's the other thing they do really, really well with all this information, this ability to describe things. How many of you, actually, let me tell you this story. Every year at Apple, there's a Bring Your Kids to Work Day. And the best place to go is the packaging building. This is a company that builds iPods and iPhones and all this stuff. And going in, seeing the packaging is like totally amazing. How many of you have had that experience, right? You go and you buy a new MacBook Air, you buy your iPhone, whatever it is, and you're holding it in your hands. And it's heavy, right? And it's got a nice plastic thing on it, and you pull off the plastic, and you feel this amazingly good job that they did. I'm printing the ink on there. It feels good. There's like a texture to it. And then you open it up like a treasure chest. And you're like, wow, look at that. You don't see the documentation. You don't see the cables. You don't see anything except the product at that exact moment. And you lift it up, and there's the cables and everything else. Then, if you're really kind of nutty, what do? You start taking pictures. And you go and do the unboxing experience of this product that you just purchased. I will remind you, you are taking pictures of something that you're going to throw away. It's the packaging, right? This is part of the experience of the Apple products, is really getting in and surprising users with the packaging. This is nutty. It's a complete user experience that the designer is responsible for. And it's not just those things I described. It's the emotion of the product, the voice, the consistency of the details. Any of the engineers in here start looking at this and they're like, it's kind of getting a little fuzzy. A little hippy-dippy here, Rands. You know, I want it to scale. I'm not really worried about the emotion of the product, right? And that comes back to the fundamental tension. We, the engineers, and we, the designers, both believe our job is the most important thing, right? There is a fundamental tension between us. We both believe the thing that we're doing is the most important thing. Are we going to make it scale, or are we going to give it voice? You know, we can have debates about both, right? Are we going to worry about the icon, or are we going to do this other thing? The point is, there's all of these decisions that happen, and if you have equally powered engineer and equally powered designer, there's going to be a lot of brilliant arguments, which is why you need one other person. I thought it was going to be Steve Jobs, not Charlie Palmer, right? You need a dictator. You need a dictator. I kind of sweated about this word a lot because this is a pretty heavy-duty word. But the consequences are pretty high. If you don't have a dictator, this is what you get. It's very pretty, isn't it? It's called nothing. Isn't nothing great? All of that work, and look what you did. You didn't do anything. All of those products started. The reason we don't have anything up here is we don't know about these products because they never actually occurred, right? This is me late night in '97 going like, fuck it, I'm going to write a text editor, right? And I did the world's best text editor you've never heard of. Or the designer who sat down and said, you know, I really want to do location-based photo, and they sat down in Photoshop, and that's as far as they got. Or they did something without an engineer there, didn't work out. A dictator helps you get the thing done. A dictator's responsibility is, I'm the one who's telling you how it is. And it's a scary word, again, but the stakes are high here, right? A tamer version of the dictator is a decision maker, right? But it's not just a decision. They have to have actual meat behind the decisions that they're making. And the reason that meat is, they know what they want. Don't confuse having an opinion with knowing what you want. Don't confuse confidence in that opinion with knowing what you want. Dictators, good dictators, what they're able to do is they really are abundantly clear and can defend for hours, days, years, that thing that they want. Knowing what you want means totally and completely defining that want. You need to be an expert in it. This is really hard to do. I know a couple of dictators. Let's talk about them. Shocking. I'm shocked. Steve Jobs is absolutely, totally, 100% a dictator, and he's one of the best ones, probably the best one out there. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a second. My wife. It's funny. Also true, too. No, this is not my wife, although she's beautiful. This is Tosh. She looks so friendly, right? You know what Tosh does? We're sitting there drinking champagne on the bus that takes you to the speaker's dinner at Wellington. So you get on this bus, you drink a lot, and they drive you around, and there's this very nice person with a New Zealand accent who just seems like such a nice lady. And I know Tosh very well. And over the 3 years that I have been going, the 3 times I've had the opportunity to go to Webstock, I have discovered the secret to Webstock is her. She is the person who is defining the voice, the emotion, who's absolutely clear what a successful Webstock is. And she may look like she's really nice, but she can be super mean. But it's because she knows what she wants. She is the dictator of this conference, and she's making sure that it's executing to her vision. Another dictator. Really? No. No, this is an MBA guy, right? This is a guy who's very smart and very bright guy and all that sort of stuff, but not a dictator, right? He ran the business, but tell me something that Microsoft has done in the last 5 years that's like knocking your socks off. Bing is doing well. The Connect on the Xbox Connect is amazing. Okay. SharePoint? Get him another round. Have another drink. I remember, this is the dictator in case you were wondering. I remember when I was working at Netscape, we were on Netscape 3 at that time, and we were all busily working along, and Microsoft hadn't awoken yet. And I got this email from the guy who went to the conference, whatever the conference was for Microsoft. And the email was basically, and they had just been fumbling it. They hadn't actually got it yet. It was basically like they do everything, they do absolutely everything that the current version of Netscape does. It looks better and it works better. And they did this in the course of about 8 months. You can say what I want about this guy, but what he did with Microsoft at whatever size it was back in 96, 97, he pivoted that entire company in the course of a year, which is really fucking hard to do. And he knew exactly what he wanted. He's very famous for these, I don't know whether this is true or not, but going on these like 1 weeks, like go discover himself, read 100 books on a boat sort of thing, came back and said, well, the internet's going to be a big deal. And by the way, he was right. This is a dictator. A good dictator allows for consistency that is usually killed by politics. A good dictator kills ambiguity, dead, it's lovely. A good dictator will give you unparalleled velocity. So let's talk about that. A consistent experience. I think this is the thing that makes Apple, this is the thing that makes Apple Apple. And it's the planet Earth. On the planet Earth, there are some of these. And inside of these, there's people. And they're looking at things. They're looking at these products that are on these big butcher boards. You all been in an Apple store? What does it feel like? You know what it feels like? It feels like a museum. Want to know why? Because it was built to look like a museum. They buy products that look like this. There's these boxes that are so fun to carry and look like treasure boxes. Inside of those boxes are products. Hardware. Gorgeous hardware. Lickable hardware. Inside of the hardware is hard drives, which contains software. The thing we always said at Apple is the best thing to frame Mac OS X was our hardware. Software is the same. Instead of that, they're now building their own chips as well. All of this is the Apple ecosystem, which is what McDonald's did forever ago as well. All of these things fit together. How do they fit together? All of these, well, let's talk about this. When I look at this, let's go to any other company on the planet, big company on the planet. You've got your retail division, you've got your product guys, you've got your hardware guys, you've got all this stuff. Each of these groups probably has a very big, huge, fat ego person at the top, right? You've got this big, fat ego person at the top. They've got their division. They've got their own roles. They've got their politics, what's going on. How in the world does Ron Johnson, Scott Forstall, Bob Mansfield, Bertrand doesn't work there anymore, and that guy that got fired, how do these guys getting along? I mean, we're talking about a big, huge company. Why? Because they have the fear. And the fear is, this is my words, they don't want to let Steve down because he will take you apart, right? Steve Jobs doesn't go and vet the processor design to make it great. He doesn't vet every box. He vets about 5–10% of it, and then everyone else goes, well, that's Steve approved, so we're going to make it look like that. That's why all of these things work well together, is you have a person at the top who's scaring the hell out of everybody. No, not really. The person who's making the decisions, who knows very clearly what he wants. It's the same thing at Webstock for me, right? They treat the people so well. They do such a good job of making you feel awesome. When you go there, you go, oh, God damn it, I better just nail this. Otherwise, I'm not holding up my agreement. I'm not holding up my end of the awesome agreement. Consistency. The other thing is death to ambiguity. When Steve got to, I think this was 98, when he got to back to Apple, there was a lot of Apple products. There was a crap load of these. Each of these, think of each of these as a Mac except for the Newton and the Pippin. Anyway, so there's a huge amount, and there's a lot of different products underneath there. There are like versions of each of these, right? 15 different product platforms. Dang. So what did he do? He said, okay, we're going to make it really simple. We're going to do 4 products, right? That's all we're going to do. Got rid of how many different product lines that people were super attached to, and I'm sure could sit there and argue and say, hey, listen, we got to do this. It's really important. He said, nope, clean slate, pivot the company. We're going to do 4 products. And this is going to allow each team to have our A people on it. They're not going to be all spread out, right? And then the other thing it's going to do is as soon as we're done with one, half the team's going to be working on the next. So we're in this cyclical pattern. Everyone sits there and kind of wonders about when Apple's products are going to come out. Just go back and look at the last 2 years. It's actually pretty easy to figure out. It's on a very cyclical pattern. But it was Steve that actually said, listen, we're going to reduce it down to this stuff. A couple of years later, I couldn't find this on YouTube, there was another box on there, which was consumer electronics, which kind of turned into a thing as well. Velocity. How many of you have been in this meeting? After I have a quick drink of water. Eight of you, 10 of you, engineering, design, content, all in the room. You're debating something, and this meeting is going nowhere, right? Jennifer's talking about this, Michael's talking about that, you're talking about this. It's just going on and on and on. You're half hour into this meeting, you're like, good God, is someone going to make a decision? And they don't. It keeps on going. 45 minutes later, still this meeting is going on and on and on. These are awful meetings that we must kill. What the secret power of the dictator is something that's awesome. They take consensus and they have this magical power, and it's called saying no. No, we're not going to do that. No, no. They say no to these things. How can they do that, right? I've got this big thing. That's this amazing idea. You're going to totally ruin my morale if you don't let me go do this thing, right? No, we're not going to do that. So it's a pretty risky thing to do, saying no to someone, right? And that's the thing is, dictators can be killed, right? You got to look at their track record and kind of go, okay, am I going to believe this no or not, right? I'm pretty sure that most people at Apple, when Steve says no, they're like, okay, great, no problem. And it's because of the body of work. Look at the results. I want to go back to this one here. So this is great IA writer. Has anyone got the IA writer? It's this, you got that? Absolutely. New York Times people, not surprising. The IA writer, for those of you who don't know, is like this 90-cent app. It's a 90-cent app for the iPad to go and like write stuff, right? If you really want to do it, you've got to go actually buy the keyboard, which is like $79. So of course I had to figure out whether it was good or not. So to try out the 99-cent app, I went and bought the $80 keyboard, which shows you the brilliance of Steve Jobs. Anyway, so I sat down, I plugged in my iPad into my keyboard, and I'm like, this is great. Okay, dear Chad, how's that second beer? You doing? That's interesting. And then what did I do? Of course, what did I do? I hit File Save. Where is that in an iPad? In fact, can you tell me a place you can actually rename a file on an iPad? All of these things, or move a file from one place to another. The file system in the iPad is it's definitely there, obviously. It's almost non-existent. Which is kind of weird to me because I, of course, want to be able to see my files and organize them and do all these things with them and kind of obsess about them and get ADD about them, and it's not there at all. Your mom doesn't give a crap about a file system. And that's a pretty big and bold statement to make about an OS. And I can't think of any other company. Imagine the meeting where they're sitting there and going like, we're going to abstract away the file system. You're not going to see it at all. And how many hands are going to come up? Well, how are they going to understand this? Where are they going to move the file? No, that's not what we're going to do. We're not going to do it. Someone, and I'm guessing it was Steve, I don't know, said, no, most people do not actually care about this at all. We're going to hide this thing that people have decades of use from. That's amazing. And I think that, again, is the power of the dictator. They got rid of the file system. Oh, my God. You can't save a file. That's so weird. Anyway. This is a beautiful venue. Isn't it gorgeous? It's like a church. This is the venue for Webstock. They picked the absolute best place. I haven't been to Auckland, I don't know, but this is this amazing place. You walk in and you go like, holy crap, I better nail this presentation. This is Tosh. He's like, 2006, she said, I have no idea what I'm going to get, who's going to show up for this conference. But I'm going to absolutely have the best venue because I want people to see we're serious about this. I want them to see what an amazing place Wellington is. This is an act of a dictator in my head. Too bad. Anyway. Connect was awesome, I swear. Great dictators, in my opinion, are forces of nature. They just have this ability to focus you, and they have this ability to cut through the crap and get to the essential thing. Now, you're in a hurry. You are 3 years away from your next gig, and you have this table. And whether you're a designer or an engineer or a dictator, you now have some idea about who I think the personalities are that need to be sitting at the table. Maybe you don't know which of these you are. I have a promise for you. I guarantee this. You're horrifically bad at something. I'm not sure what it is. If you don't know, go ask your friends. They'll say, yeah, your detail orientation sucks, right? The point is, there's some way to augment you to make you better. And I'm not saying it needs to be 3 people. I think the point is, you're going to have a designer, you're going to have an engineer, and the point is to find that person, to pick that person who is responsible for making the decisions. Otherwise, The two of you, bright people, designer and engineer, are going to talk a lot. You're going to do a lot of amazing things. You're not going to get as far as you expect without someone there making the big, fat decisions. You're worried about all these other people, HR, sales, legal, operations. Nothing. You don't worry about these people at all. They'll come and screw things up later, but it's only after you've been successful. The thing you want to do, the thing I want to leave you with in this team, this next thing that you're going to go build, is the elevator pitch. You want to go find that very simple message to describe easily the thing that you're going to go do. Apple's really good at that. This isn't the product. This is more the philosophy, right? I don't know what it is that you're going to go do, but I'm excited because it's an exciting time to be building stuff, especially here at Etsy. And, you know, you're awesome. Thank you. Q&A? I guess we're doing some Q&A. Yeah, anywhere. Let's go. I'm keeping you from the booze.
I think I'll ask probably the most obvious question. If you're a
Yeah.
designer, can you be an engineer? If you're an engineer, can you be a designer?
Yeah,
if you're a
you
designer,
can,
you be a
absolutely.
dictator? How mutable are these roles?
I haven't, it's a great question. There's this guy at Flipboard whose name I've always forgot, and he is actually both. And Evan? Is it Evan? Yeah. No, Evan is not. He's an engineer. There's another guy there who is, huh? Craig Vaughn, is that it? Okay, so this guy knows what it is. I've seen these people. They do exist. They are able to likely transcend both sides of the brain. And maybe this is something that's evolving over time, but it's not, you still need that pairing, so I think. You also need someone else to argue with too, by the way. Other questions? Anything else? Good. In the back.
Talk to me about analytics. Talk to me about measurement. Where do you think that in the entire process? I don't want to, I guess, single out especially Apple, but since you come from that background.
I think there's a balance to the two. I mean, I think the thing that we learned from Doug Bowman at Google was you can get lost in the analytics and you can get analysis paralysis. And at some point you just stop and go and be inspired. So I think right now the thing that we're doing, the company I'm working at right now, we use it as directional data. It informs us, but it's not the only thing that we go by, right? We take it and say, okay, this is a trend. We're seeing this, but we're going to think a little bit further ahead, and we're going to make a leap. We're going to make a risk. We're going to make an investment in something that maybe even contradicts it, because it's your brain working, being inspired as well as taking the data, if that makes any sense. The thing is, at PayPal, PayPal was doing all of this work in detecting fraud. Actually, it wasn't fraud. It was something that the Russian mafia was doing. They were somehow laundering money. And they were great at writing these algorithms to detect. But what happens the moment that the bad guys figure out how they're detecting is they just change the model, right? So they were constantly writing new algorithms to actually catch up with them, right? They discovered the best way to actually catch it was to write tools to brute force, to gather the data, and the human brain to actually interpret it. It's actually the best way to place chess, is have the computer doing the brute force stuff, and then you to be inspired. If that makes sense. It's both. Other questions? Up here.
To become a better engineer, you have to spend time working on your craft. To become a better designer, similarly, you have to spend a lot of time.
Absolutely.
To become a better dictator, or is that even the goal?
Well, that's a great question. How do I practice being a dictator? No. Exactly. And I'm done. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. Steve isn't an engineer, and by the way, he's not a designer. What the thing is that he does really, really well, I don't know the guy, I'm talking about him like no, but that's because you've worked there for a while, is he is the user of his products. So he's abundantly clear of the thing is that he wants, right? And I think the thing is like take the time to actually research and understand the thing is that you want to do, right? Be an expert in it, right? I don't know if that's a good answer to that, but that's the thing is, that's what I see in great dictators is that like they are crystal clear what 2 years of this plan is, every little piece.
So I have the follow-up question to that. So Steve Jobs, we have 15 years of data. We know he's a great dictator. How do you know before 15 years have passed? Like, how do you know, like, 1 month, 6 months, 18 months in, someone's a great dictator or someone's just wrong? Like, how do you figure that out?
Wait, say that again. I missed the middle part there.
How do you figure out someone's a great dictator?
How do you figure it out?
Yeah.
There's got to be a track record, right? There's got to be some sort of track record there. I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on the product that you're doing. It's, you know, if it's something, it depends on the product.
So it's just a question of time then?
It's a question of time and whatever your success metric is, right? It's like Instagram, is there a great dictator there? I don't know. Fucking love it. But, you know, I don't know. And that's something that they made. I think there's a very, I suspect there's a dictator on Instagram. Because they reduced it, right, maybe you know this guy, reduced it down to the bare simple, this is what it's going to be, I know what it wants to be, right? We knew right away. Can he repeat it? Can he scale it? We don't know. I don't know. Another question? In the front.
Where do you find dictators? Like, where do they hang out? Like, if you want to, if you
all
need,
the best places. Where do you find
if you are dictatorless.
Well, I think that. Oh, you talk. This is a great question. What was it? That's a great question. In an existing environment, or you want to go find your dictator? Or are you just trying to make me squirm?
No,
okay.
No. I don't think really. If you have ideas or you want to make something,
yeah.
Where you find your dictator.
I think that my ideal set is that you have the engineer and the designer, and someone gets the hat. And yes, that means that someone's probably optimizing in their favor, whether an engineer or designer, but it's someone who says, listen, I have the vision here. This is the thing that I'm going to be doing. And it just usually shows up in that person who can just really wants to dig in and understand the thing. So
you have to look inside.
Absolutely. And keep an eye on the track record as well, right? Are they waffling all over the place? You're not seeing success? Yeah, that's not a dictator. That's just someone who's really good at pitching you on something like I'm doing right now. All right. Yeah. Yep. That's the other talk, dude, that I didn't do. Yeah.
So can you maybe talk about that a little bit? And
yeah, I was talking with you know, I kind of hang out with engineers. I'm sure there's. What was that? 37 Signals? Is that a designer guy? He's definitely a dictator. Let me tell you about the companies run by engineer thing. Who uses Instapaper? Instapaper? This is such a Mac-friendly crowd. This is awesome. Instapaper is a guy, friend of mine, who did Tumblr. His name is Marco. Having dinner with him on Saturday. He lives here. Marco is I'm fascinated by because that company is him. And he's making a lot of money. Sorry, Marco. You're doing okay. He's doing really, really well. And by the way, Marco is way off the chart in terms of smart and all this sort of stuff. But the thing is, it's him. It's one guy doing a big, huge service. Talking with Chad before this, is like, could we have done that 5, 10 years ago? The answer is absolutely not. Because we'd have to go build a data center. We need a data center guy. We need an ops guy. We need to go do the software and buy the tools and blah, blah, blah. The cost of actually building a thing, which is why I think this team construction thing is such a big deal, is zero. You just need the people to actually get something out the door these days, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that engineers are running it is because they don't need the MBA to come in and start working the spreadsheets and kind of like say, hey, we need $1.2 million here. You're going to need that at some point, but it's much capital intensive, so the engineers can run the show. That's my opinion, and I think that small companies are changing because of that, because of the ready availability of all of these wheels we can just grab, and they're already done. You don't have to do anything. You need to wire it together. You have a designer, you have an engineer, you have a dictator, but it's much lower. So that's the basic. He's not. Have you seen it? It's a crappy site. You know, seriously, the typography is horrific. Sorry, Marco. It's really, no. I mean, but again, I mean, so is Craigslist. So is, I mean, there's a lot of examples. Gmail. These, I'm not saying this is the only way to be successful. I'm just saying from an engineering perspective, there's a lot of ways to take something and own it, take it super nuts. Warming up over there.
If you compare the dictator, seems like it's someone very high level. How would you compare a dictator to, say, a product or project manager in a more traditional, larger scale company, or even like an engineering-driven company where who is the dictator there? Yeah, so this is a good point. I didn't say this during my talk, which is I'm not just, this is also something that you can do in a team, like you're in an existing eco. It's a little bit harder because you have politics and whatnot. But I think the real point is we're going to pick a person, we're going to pick the person who is going to be the person who's going to make a decision, right? We're going to decide that, right? It's the 7 of us. Here's the engineering team, here's the design team, we got a project manager. We got a boss is whatever the hell he's doing. We're going to pick that person and say, this is the person. We're going to anoint you the dictator. We might kill you, but we're going to decide and make you the person who's going to make a decision. This is, by the way, I'm like, my whole like religion of people and teams is like everyone's opinions matter. So this is sort of contradictory to like building consensus, but you need to have that person who can stop and say, okay, we're done. We've made a decision. Let's move on.
So are you recommending more of a formal structure around that election and then process forward?
It depends. Either way, right? I think it can be either way. I think it can be the team evolves and say, hey, this is the person who's going to be our dictator. Or, listen, we are traditionally really a debatey kind of company. Team, whatever it is. So, we're going to pick someone to actually be the decision maker. They're not making every decision. Maybe they are. I don't know. But the point is, they're the person who is responsible for that. And again, it's a risky role. But again, this meetings I've been in forever where we're just sitting here talking about it endlessly. All we wanted, and sometimes this person's there and sometimes they're not, all we wanted was someone to say, okay, you own the decision, and trust them. All right, still going. Any other questions? Anyone else? Going. Thank you very much. It was lovely to be here.